Welcome to an old world exploration into New Haven, Connecticut. If you're new to the channel, I'd like you to be aware that my videos feature a collection of architecture from days gone by, from specific locations. The old world aspect involves my speculation into the historical narrative that we're given. I question the timelines, the architects, the fires. I believe what we've been handed down through history is a misdirection, and I believe much of what we're seeing is older than we're being told. And maybe you're wondering who could possibly be behind such a misdirection. Well, maybe you're old enough to remember when these two were going head to head for the top seat in the US government, and it was made clear to us that they were from the same secret society and that their secrets could not be shared with the public. Well, my view is that the public has a right to know. And that, of course, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. Anyway, let's get to New Haven, Connecticut. Well, we begin with some geography. We zoom in on the eastern seaboard of the United States. You can see New Haven right here on the ocean. The second location from Connecticut that we've covered here on this channel, Hartford being the other, some time back. And some population demographics for you. In the modern day, we're looking at 134,000-ish. We turn the clocks back to the turn of the 20th century. We're just over 100,000 people in the New Haven area. So let's get to the visuals. And we're looking for well-established architecture and infrastructure, such as the roads you see here. The streetcars, of course, in full effect, as they are everywhere we look. Multi-storied buildings and the technology for the time, looking somewhat rudimentary compared to the architecture that we're seeing. And right away, we're getting all these indications from New Haven, Connecticut. Of course, I like to show you the examples of architecture. We don't have a name for this building. It could be a mansion of some sort, not sure. But we keep an eye out for architecture that really is not so common in the modern day, that has sort of fallen by the wayside. And this is a good example of it. The curved corner and the very ornate cornices on the roof lines, the arched windows, and of course the very high quality building materials that were used. Also, we're looking at lower entrances, gated off lower areas, not making a lot of sense when it comes down to the practicality of building at a time when the means at our disposal to construct were nothing like we have in the modern day. You're going to see a lot from Yale University in this presentation. Here's one of the examples. Looks like a sorority house. Let's take note of the timelines that were given for these structures as we proceed. New Haven, a little bit confusing, the timelines that were given for a lot of the construction on these. This one still stands. You can see it nestled in between the modern structures here. And quite a few demolitions as well, as you'll see. This is the Alumni Hall, said to have been built in 1850. Of course, New Haven having that long backstory for a North American city that stretches back into the Puritans, air quote, Puritans, and they're coming over and establishing colonies on the eastern seaboard of the United States. This one gets demolished in 1911, very early time period to be demolishing a castle-type structure. And you could see the quality of materials on this. This is said to have been built in 1850. The way I look at that is not according to the timeline we're given about history. So right away, something is wrong with the narrative as far as I'm concerned. We're supposed to be basically digging ourselves out of the muck. We probably were digging ourselves out of the muck, if you're familiar with the mud flood and all the things that go along with that. I have this visual from the interior of the Alumni Hall. I believe it's the Alumni Hall. It gets a little confusing when you do this digging, the way that they jumble around the designations for some of these buildings. Quite extravagant, though, if this was the structure said to have been built in 1850. And having that real sort of closed-off secret society feel there as well. We have one of the armories you're going to see here. There's a foot guard armory. Couldn't find much on this, covered in ivy here. Another armory, this one is the Troop A armory. Built in 1880, demolished in 1930. They're tearing down castle-like structures in the early decades of the 20th century here in New Haven. You're also going to see a lot of structures being built in this time period here. This is 1917 to 21. The little tower from the Brantford Court, part of the quadrangle, I believe. Of course, if you're from the area, correct me if I'm wrong. Specifics to the region are sometimes difficult to nail down. Very busy building period, despite the fact that the world was at war and many of our young men were being sent overseas. Just a few modern looks at this structure. Apologies for the watermarks. They seem to be popping up more and more in my research these days, the watermarks, which I find interesting. But you can see what we would consider in the old world research scene, movement, whatever you want to call it, evidence of tech in the upper reaches of this structure here. You'll see that moving forward as well. This is the old pump on the green. Everyone posing for a photo. I think we get remnants of the infrastructure that once existed in some of these monuments, fountains, in this case a pump. Here we have a fountain. A lot of them get converted into memorials, and the fountain gets taken out of the equation. What we also get with the historical narrative is a chronology of structure. So they're telling us this is what Yale looked like in 1800. And of course, it's a drawing, so we have to take them at face value historically. And the argument is often made that these examples are well documented, usually behind closed doors in these areas of academic authority. So the point of what I'm doing on my channel is to say I don't trust those who are in academic authority, and hopefully that was made clear in the introduction. Numerous churches in New Haven, as you can see here. We'll see them as we move forward as well. There's that pump once again, and the posers posing for it. Street scenes giving us all the hallmarks, the mansard style roofs with the very prominent looking dormers with pediments on top. Multi-storied lower stories below street level. All classics of old world architecture. There is a number of lighthouses, or are a number of lighthouses as well in the New Haven area. Were they a part of the old world energy grid? All these things have been considered when looking into this. Once you start to question history, the flower opens up to you, if you will, and the petals start to expose themselves. Again, they're giving us that the change. They want to show us that it once was simpler, although not that simple for 1807, really, when you think about it. And they have expanded and turned it into something like this. And I think it's misdirection. This is the technology for the fire department at the turn of the century. That's probably why they had so much trouble putting out these fires that were started. So we're getting a sense now of the feel for turn of the century, New Haven, Connecticut. And a people that, are they new to the region? Are we looking at a repopulation? Did the repopulation happen earlier? Were the secrets heavily guarded? Especially in this region. We have a few churches said to have been built at a very early time period. The center church built in 2 years in 1812 to 14. Remember, there's a war going on then as well. The Chamber of Commerce building. There's that timeline again, the 19 teens. This one's demolished in the 80s, 1980s. Quite a large structure, again, for that early time period. The Christ Church, this one gets built, we're told, in the late 1800s, taking 3 years to construct. Still stands. And there's just a sense of the quality of building materials, looking like this could have been standing for a good 300-400 years easily. And just look at the interior. Very, very precise architecture going on here. Hard to picture rough wooden scaffolds mounted all around here to get all of this done. I think there's much more to the story than what we're being told. This is the old City Hall, which still stands. We said it was built in 1861 and it has been heavily remodeled along the way. Just a few old looks at it. Looks like it's next to the old Chamber of Commerce here. Massive sign on top. Another massive sign on top. These signs always looking after the fact. And there's a nice black and white look. The horses and their buggies out front. And this beautiful City Hall structure. And you can see what's changed when you go back here. We've diminished the buildings as they often do. We also get a look at the City Hall without the structures behind here. Now, I've speculated on this channel that there is a lot of fakery afoot with history, and that it's quite likely and possible for them to have snipped and clipped a lot of these to portray the timeline that they want us to believe to be true. Here you have the horses out front too. So what would be the age difference between these two photographs? And things to consider. There's another look. When we're looking at the front entry of the City Hall, and we'll take a look at the interior too. You have this very, very ornate ironwork going on here. Again, the level of finishing going on at that early time period is flies in the face of reason to what we're expected to believe of what was capable at the time. The Cloister Hall, built in the 1880s. This looks like a one-year wonder. Kind of a unique building. Still stands. Very heavy-looking building materials here with the stone, the bulgy stone. They're calling this one the Colony. You can see, built in 1898, and they get rid of it in 1969. No doubt there's an urban renewal aspect whenever you see these dates. You can safely assume usually that urban renewal is usually the culprit for the demolition of these structures. And there's a nice black and white look at the Colony House. The County Courthouse being built in and around that same 19-teens when a lot of other big things are going on. Population is dramatically shifting. Let's not forget the Spanish flu as well that gripped much of the world at that time. A very prominent, heavy-duty looking structure as well. Get a closer look at some of the way that is put together as it still stands in the modern day. Very, very high level of finishing going on here. The Dwight Hall. This one's supposedly built in 1842. I'm not sure if this is the Dwight Hall. This one was confusing as well because this is also considered to be the Dwight Hall, which was used as a library for a time. Built in 1889, we're told. Let's take a closer look. You can also see the demolition date of 1926, getting rid of castles again in New Haven in the 20s this time. The Exchange Hall, built in 1832, this one going way back, looking like it has been modernized. You can see the structure next to it as well. So much of this going on in New Haven. Also, the federal courthouse being built around the same time the other courthouse is being built. You can just imagine being in the construction industry and having your pick of the litter, which buildings you want to work on, if we're to believe the historical narrative. There's a look at the federal courthouse. And you have another church, the First Baptist Church, 1903. This one's built. They could have told us it was 1803 and probably would have believed them as well, if you're believing what you're being told. The Free Public Library, I believe it was initially a church and used as a public library for a time, according to my research. And it's just a look at the green, they call it, green space. I think it was Olmsted, Frederick Law Olmsted. He's one of those architects, especially in the civil end of things. Had a lot to do with designing parks, where I think a lot of redesigning was going on, personally. Just showing you some of the structures that surrounded the green. And this is what it looks like in the modern day from the same view. And this is what happens over time, right? Get rid of this type of building and then plop in one of these. Here we have the Hendry Hall, said to have been built in 1894. Certainly no slouch. We have a high school, built in 1875, demolished in the 1970s. So it almost gets 100 years. The Hill House High School, built also in the 1870s. Not sure when it was demolished, but it was demolished, from what I could see. Just couldn't pinpoint a date. And yet another high school. And we'll keep moving forward. Coming to the Grace Hospital, built in 1889. Demolished not too long ago, 2006. I doubt it was in this state when it was demolished, but couldn't find anything. I did find a picture of some of the the lovely nurses of the Grace Hospital. We have the New Haven Hospital, and I did find this categorized under asylums on the asylum webpage, so it must have been used for a time to house people who were questioning the narrative. That's what I believe anyway. I have it as expanded in 1871, demolished in the 1950s. There's a nice close-up look of the New Haven Hospital, and yeah, I suspect that's what these gents with their bright white outfits are up to. Having to reset the narrative. Anyone that's not going along with it ends up in treatment. The hospital in New Haven. Hotel Duncan, built in 1894, busy time period again. We see this from location to location in the late 1800s. The argument is often made that people from surrounding areas were brought in to construct many of these things if the population demographics don't fit what we're seeing. And I think that's a desperate attempt to justify the narrative because it seems to be going on everywhere we look. I think it's much easier just to throw out the narrative we're given and question it. There it is in the modern day. It's used as apartments, I believe. Oh, I like this one too. The Hotel Taft. This is a one-year wonder. Took them 1 year to build this. Over 300 rooms in the Hotel Taft. That's almost a room a day. And you think, okay, well, that's easy to do. You have enough guys doing it. Remember how many other things are going on at the same time. You have to wonder what kind of finishing went on in this structure. Well, first of all, let's look at this one, just showing us the rooftop garden patio that doesn't appear to be here anymore in this one. And if we look at some of the interior of the Hotel Taft, you're really going to have to stretch the narrative to make me believe that this was built in 1 year. Anyone who's worked on a hotel in the modern day of such size, probably right there with me on this one, making very little sense to put all of this work in to such a short period of time. It's absolutely absurd. The ballroom, the stairs. This is just the evidence that we have of it. Absolutely off the charts level of finishing going on here. I think it also still survives as an apartment complex of some sort, or something along those lines anyway. But this is the main area, showing us all those old world signs. The Ives Memorial Library, 1908 to 1911, still stands. There it is in the modern day. So they're just throwing these things up all over the place in that time period, really packing it in tight to a several decade time period, really. The Kent Chemical Laboratory, which is now gone, was built in 1888, we're being told. 1930s, they get rid of this. You can see heavy stonework. Pretty illogical to do all this demolition, especially at a time when, isn't there supposed to be some sort of Great Depression going on? Well, of course, they'll tell us it was part of the Public Works project, where they demolished buildings and built them to create work to get the economy going. Yeah, I'm not sure how much I buy that one either. I think it's part of a concerted effort to erase much of what once was. Here's another 1930 demolition. Another armory looking like a castle. Built in 1880, right, sure. The Metropolitan Store, built in 1877, demolished in 1973. Urban Renewal taking this one, no doubt. Let's take a closer look at the only evidence I could find of this structure, the Metropolitan Store. You have to wonder why there isn't more available on this one. So often is the case. And just a look at part of the Yale campus. We will get to these buildings. The Osborne Hall, built in 1 year in 1889, demolished in 1926. Or those wrecking balls really must have taken a beating going up against all this stone. Just a glimpse of what life was like at the time. What kind of grasp of history did these people have? Was it just the cookie-cutter version? You know, Rome, the Dark Ages, the Enlightenment, Industrial Revolution? You have to wonder. The Peabody Museum of Natural History, part of the university, opened in 1876, still stands. And you can see what it's used for as well, just to give us a sense of deep time, if you will. Letting us know that these creatures once roamed the earth, and they put them on display for us. And you don't question that narrative, because it's the new truth. But this thing looking like a Gothic cathedral of some sort, not really looking like a museum, or as you would think of as a museum. Here you can see the underside of the ceiling portion of this museum. The intricate brickwork, stonework. Absolutely gorgeous. Degree of difficulty off the charts. I like this one too. This is a visual provided of the iguanodons and some of the early dinosaurs. And if you look in the background, well, to me, that looks like maybe it was a melted building. So are they throwing it in our faces with this stuff? The peristyle. You get a lot of this evidence as well, these leisure locations. Leftover leisure locations from the old world is my assumption, speculation. And another Yale building, the Phelps Hall. We did see this a little bit earlier, with the 4 domes around the corner, built in 1896, we're being told. Looks like they demolished a lot of buildings that had this look, but this one survives, and it can be categorized as a university building. Very high quality stonework again. All right, one of the tombs, tying in nicely with what we saw at the beginning. What goes on behind closed doors, the public cannot know. The Plymouth Church, 1894. this one is constructed. Another beauty stone structure. Remember now the population in New Haven is just over 100,000 at the turn of the century. Not that big. Good size, decent size for that time period, but we're not talking about Chicago size or any of that kind of thing. This is not a large city at the time. The Poli's Theater, one of a group of theaters, this Poly gentleman is supposedly responsible for constructing. This one lasts 55 years. Decided to put a dome on top of it and all sorts of statues. I also found a visual of the demolition of this, but I don't think it's the same building because it doesn't look, the windows don't look the same. This was tagged as the demolition of the Poli's Theater. The old post office, 1881, they built this, and they demolished it in 1952, but don't you worry, because they replaced it with this post office. Okay, let's keep going. The Quinnipiac Brewery, not sure. 1896, busy time period. They're just throwing up breweries, putting up towers on the corners, multi-storied, putting a little flair. Why not? Easy to do, apparently, at the time. Still stands, giving us a sense of the way that they built in the old world. Probably blended old and new. You can see back here. Looking quite plain back here. Okay. The general offices of the railroad company, New York, New Hampshire, not sure all of the acronyms there. But these offices, massive, you can see here. Built in 1890, they put these together and they demolished it in 1960. There's another look at some of these offices. Postcard form, of course, the snippet clip, as is often done with these postcards. Part of the railroad station, and I would suspect has been heavily modified down through time. There's a look at some of the interior of this thing. I also found this postcard, which I found to be interesting. We saw these three structures already, but we'll zoom in on the proposed railroad station that was supposedly never built. Now I wonder, was it never built, or was it modified and turned into something like this? Who knows, because we don't have evidence of it. And this is supposedly the one that predated it, destroyed by a fire in 1918. So they're building all over the place in the 19-teens, and there's also fires destroying railroad stations. And reset narrative, as far as I'm concerned. Another church, the Sacred Heart Church, 1854, little dome on top. Couldn't find much more on that. Sargent and Company Factory, 1864. They built this massive complex. Heavy industry along the ports. See that a lot as well. I think probably remnants of the old world. The Connecticut Savings Bank, built in 1907. They decided to throw some massive columns on here. And it still stands, although it is sort of sandwiched in between the modern. You still get a sense of the old world when looking at it, and the heavy stonework involved at that early time period. And a look at the interior as well, showing signs of the, you get the flower. Now, is it the acanthus flower? Is it the flowering portion of the acanthus? Like Hidden Truth has told us. Interesting, because it's a plant that no longer exists, but it seems to adorn all of our buildings. Very interesting speculation going on. Second National Bank. Looks like it took about a year to build this one. Busy time period. The Sheffield Hall. Now they're telling us that this is part of a series of renovations. The most recent renovation, 1859 to 1860. They demolished it in 1957. Interesting. This pole here as well. Something's been modified on that. The streets of New Haven. They do have a lot of nice black and whites coming out of New Haven. That was nice doing the research. And a lot of these structures that we see could not really find any designation for them. But you can see how many there were. You can also see the lower windows. You're getting all of the indications here. This one still stands, actually. I believe it's... it's this one here that still stands. These ones are gone. If I'm seeing that right. And they've put this ugly brutalist behemoth next to it instead. And that's where the secrets are kept. I think I said enough about those guys. East Rock Park I thought was interesting as well. Here's a stone bridge from East Rock Park. It features the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. Looking very old world to me. And the lady with the wreath on top, which is so often seen. This is a look at the East Rock Park location with the monument on top. Some interesting geography there. Look at the geography. And even the a bit of a lake with a dam with the water spilling over. Looking like it's all infrastructure and probably some grown over infrastructure. On a closer look at the one of the statues, another one with a woman holding a wreath. St. Anne's Roman Catholic Church. I didn't have any timeline for this one. Just so many. It's unbelievable. St. Elmo's Hall, built in 1912. Part of Yale, no doubt. The Orphans Asylum. Of course, you need a place to put the orphans. The asylum. Does it mean they're... No. I know people will correct me, but something crazy about this. Let's just say. 1876. They demolished it. Somewhere in the mid-20th century. Couldn't pinpoint the decade even. And there's a look at some of the buildings that were supposedly associated with this orphans asylum. A large amount of orphans coming out of the turn of the century, no matter where you look. St. Francis Church, sort of hidden in this postcard, still stands. There's a look at it in the modern day. St. Joseph's Church, 1905, one-year wonder. Really easy to throw churches up, I guess, turn of the century. And yeah, a rather large file coming out of New Haven. So we'll keep moving, just to keep, to get it all in a reasonable time frame, let's say. St. Mary's Church, 1870 to 74. They built this one in 4 years in the 1870s. And there's a look at the St. Mary's Church at what it, in a nice black and white for you. Feeling like there's something missing from this tower portion here. Not sure why you would build it and have this taller than that. And they have added this part in the modern day, but I suspect that there was much more of a tower on that than we're even seeing now. St. Paul's Church, 1830. This one's going way back. This is the old State House, we're told. We get this a lot, trying to give us a sense of chronology again of the past. I don't think there's any evidence of this one remaining. Another look at the colony. Let's keep going here. I believe this is what replaced the colony in that location. So more brutalist box BS. The Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Large complex again, industrial complex in New Haven, Connecticut. I feel like I should do a video just on a lot of these industrial complexes that seem to be all over the place. Third Congregational Church, 1856. It gets the wrecking ball in 1911. And I believe, yes, this is the one that was used for a time as the free public library. You can see what's happened where they've removed the tall spire, as I was just speculating on a previous church, and they put this thing on the top of it. And the Trinity Church, looking very similar. 1816, this one going back over 200 years. We're being told probably over 200 years, probably more, and probably a lot of these also going back further than that. is. And you can see how well these things do over time. They stand the test of time. The United Church, built in 1815, we're told. Again, looking very well put together for such an old structure. There it is in the modern day. Over 200 years old. Not really ready for the wrecking ball, is it? The United Illuminating Company, in 1909, apparently they built this. You get a lot of the these hoods over the windows, awnings, I should say. You see this a lot in the turn of the century photographs. And there it is in the modern day. And keep going. Vanderbilt Hall. There's that name, one of the robber barons, the Vanderbilt family. This one built in 1894, we're told. See the wear and tear on the streets out front. Looking quite a bit older than 1894. And it still stands. Of course, they paved over the streets. We'll keep moving. The Webster School. Could find no other evidence of this. It says New Haven. Two halls here. We have the Welch Hall and the Phelps Hall, built in the 1890s, both of them. They also had a White City. White cities have come up from time to time in many locations, a part of that amusement aspect of the Old World, whether this was part of the New World narrative and a way for them to show off what they have claimed, or it's some repurposing of the energetics of the Old World into an amusement type setting. Not sure, but interesting to speculate on. And this thing ran from 03 to 1919 as the White City. I think it went further, but under a different name, and eventually it was gone. But you can see the funicular, I believe they call that, the inclined rail aspect of it. The Wolf's Head Hall, covered in ivy in this very early photograph, built in 1884. Looking like it's possible that could be much older. There it is in the modern day, cleared off of the ivy, the stone looking impeccable. St. Thomas Episcopal Church, built in 1855, recently demolished, from my research. I couldn't really find much more on this one either, but it's a stunner. The Farnham Hall at Yale. I have it down at 1807. I'm not sure, though, if it's bits and pieces. Again, this is where the timelines get murky. Looking into Yale gets very confusing with timelines. Probably for good reason. There it is. Parts of it still standing in the modern day. The Armory at the university, built in 1916, demolished somewhat recently once again. There's another look at the Armory. The Art School, built in the 1860s and demolished in the 1950s. So a lot. If you go to New Haven in the modern day, I'm sure you're going to be surrounded with the Old World architecture, but keep in mind how much is gone as well. And then you put the two together and yeah, it's quite spectacular. That's all part of the art school. The Woolsey Hall, this one supposedly built in 1901, through a dome on the corner. There it is, still standing, looking old. Again, that architecture, that very heavy, high quality architecture. Here's the interior of the Woolsey Hall. Looking like it's got a massive pipe organ. Very, very difficult interior finish. Very high quality. Very, very high quality. World class. This is world class. No question about it. The Charles Bingham Hall. This is now coming right up into the 20s, which is interesting. There's a handful of these that were said to have been built in the 1920s. This one still stands, and it doesn't really look like it's only 100 years old, if you ask me. And it's teched out, looking very aged. If find that hard to believe. And if your argument is going to be, well, they have documentation and they have photographs, and I'm just going to come right back at you and say, I just don't believe it. Especially if it's them holding on to the documentation. Right. Remember the secrecy thing I mentioned? There's a look at that tech tower on the Bingham Hall. Perfect. The Yale Bowl, this is an interesting structure as well. 15-month build on this one, 1914. Remember what else is going on here? How many early excavators did they have in Yale in the 19-teens? Let's look modern look at this thing. Look at this thing. It's like an earthwork structure with the surrounding sort of stone. And I'm sure that you can enter and go in right through underneath there. And this is them showing us that they're constructing it. Are they refurbishing? Are they... You have to wonder. Hard to believe. 15 months, eh? And then what kind of machinery did they have at the time available to do all of this work? In fact, that looks sodded already at this point. This part looks like it's grass, so... Make of that what you will. This is the bridge to the gallery. Again, 20s, right? Really? 1920s? Very blackened looking up here. The Divinity Hall, 1869 to 71, so 2 years to build this, and 1930 demolition. So we've seen 3 or 4 demolished in that 1930, early 30s timeline. They must have been in a rush to get rid of a lot of these before the TV. That's what I'm thinking. Just a look at the Divinity Hall here. Very high quality. Absolutely absurd to demolish this type of architecture. The Dwight Hall, I think we saw this one. This one was confusing. And keep moving forward. The Graduate School Tower, the structure in the background. Interesting. Feels like a bit of a blend, old and new. Not sure what went on here again. 1930 to 32. So at the same time they're demolishing all those other structures, they're building this guy. Having a bit of an Art Deco look, for sure. Worthy of inclusion. Doesn't look like the surrounding buildings. So probably possibly a modern extension on old architecture. Then there's this one, the Harkness Tower. Built at a time when there's so much is being built in New Haven. This one looking like it could be... If I told you this was in France, part of a cathedral in France, and it was built in the 1200s, you'd probably believe me. And of course the clock is a bit of an afterthought on here. This is part of a university. I mean, just take a look. They're just going for that cathedral look with the architecture here. There's a look at the spiral stairs inside there. Again, I could have told you it's 600 years old and you'd believe me. This is the only construction photo I could find. Where does it come from? From the manuscripts and archives of Yale University. That seems like a trustworthy source. Does that look like a construction photo to you? Looks like it's just wrapped in scaffold from this level up. Yeah, one ring to rule them all. Coming to the end of the file here, let's get through the last couple. The Hendry Hall, 1894 to 1900. We saw that one earlier. There's your timeline for it. I don't think I had it. And just a general view of the quadrangle at Yale. Sterling Memorial Library, opened in 1931. They're building like this in the 30s. At the same time they're demolishing all those other structures. They're building more castles. And some of the look of the interior of this thing. In the 30s they're doing this. Apparently, late 20s, 30s. Wow. Trying to wrap my head around that narrative. I find it very difficult. Very difficult to believe. A lot of mystery surrounding this Yale institution. And it prompting me to possibly look at many of the other post-secondary institutions. Yeah, part of a library at a university. And it looks like this. I don't have much more to say. What do you think, New Haven? Is the story on the up and up, or is there more to the story? Thanks for watching. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.